Alright, welcome to Jacob's Forge, forging on a budget. Now I've gone over ribbon burner that I've done, gone over the charcoal forge that I made out of a very similar helium tank, in fact identical size in that. Now I'm going to go over and mention I'm going to be making a propane forge. I'm going to be mounting that ribbon burner into this. Reason for that is where I'm at, there's restrictions on solid fuel burning. And so I'll have day off, I'll have a time I can forge, but because of the fact that the air quality is not good, no solid fuels are allowed to be burned. Now I'll be using a cutoff grinder. You could use a hacksaw, worst case scenario, or a skill saw. In fact, that's what I used when I was initially making the barbecue forge. Now because I am using a 4.5 inch grinder with a cutoff wheel, I'm going to be putting a mask on. The reason why, because I've used this a bunch, and see that's all the crap my filters picked up. That's the color that it looked like when I first started using this. And this is not after a whole lot of use. So one of these things, if you're going to be doing this, do stuff outside as much as you can, but always wear some type of a respirator, because you don't want the stuff in your lungs causing you more serious problems later on. Alright, there we go. Now the one thing I hadn't mentioned before I cut into this, I had already made sure that was completely vented. This valve right here is a non-resealable valve anyways. Once you pop it open, it's going to come out. So I intentionally left it open, let it drain out, let the air all get out of there already. Other thing why I wasn't worried about cutting into this with the angle grinder is because this is a helium tank. If there was any helium left inside of it, not a fire hazard. Helium's a noble gas, it's not going to react, so nothing to worry about. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to need to mark out my spot up here for the ribbon burner. I'm additionally going to be marking a spot here for a door and on the back side for a door. Now this is really what's going to be determining everything, because I want to use this kind of as my square space to work off of. Additionally, I'm going to need to weld stops on either side, because I'm not going to want this being able to roll around. So I've got to figure that out. But for the doors, I've already got that figured out, because I have these fire bricks. So I want the doors to be where I can put the fire brick in here, and it's going to block it off. So what that lets me know is that I can basically do a square around there, and that'll be perfect on that side. This side is going to be a little bit more tricky, because I need to take and trim this down and then work from there. So that's what we're looking at. I'll be going ahead doing that here. Now, one other thing you might notice, this is a fail valve. This would allow it, if too much pressure build up in the container on there, that this would then fail, pop out. So I need to be aware of that, and I'm going to actually, when I cut the door in here in the top, I'm going to make sure I cut that out as part of it. But first, need to finish getting this off here, and then I'll mark that all out. And that's why I just cut all this off first, because then I can come through from this side and get in it easier. This I'm not going to worry about, but I want this out of my way for when I take and do my doors on it. So, just to help to keep it from spinning, just putting one brick on each side right now. So that'll help to hold it in place. Realize I don't have a metal table on here, but I had this leftover cement board from doing some tile work a few years back, so I've put that on top of my workbench. That way I don't have to worry. I hit sparks, I hit wood in there, I don't have to worry about catching on fire. Now, I wear gloves. Some people say that's not a good thing with rotating equipment because your hands can get pulled into it. The reason I do is because anytime I work with something that's vibrating, I need that level of protection, because I have previously had some nerve damage from vibration, and so I have to have that leather padding there or I'll lose feeling and grip in my hand, and I don't want that to become a permanent injury. So let's go to it. Okay, now comes the fun part of the marking out. So I know I'm going to have my base here because I want to be able to cut all the way. I want to get that piece completely removed. I'll come in nice square like this. Oh, just a sec. Hello. Okay, right now I'm going to go ahead and mark out cutting the top piece off for the ribbon burner to go in. Alright, got the holes all cut out. That's going to be the back, that's why it's a smaller hole. That's going to be the front. These of course are not done. I'm going to be doing welding on here, putting some pieces of angle iron here for being able to hold the brick. So because I'm doing that, I'm going to be buffing all this when I do, or I'm going to be using a flat disc to scrape the paint off. When I do that, I'm going to come across these edges and make sure it's not cut. Other reason for wearing gloves whenever you've cut something, especially if you don't have any sharp edges taken off, you don't want any metal slivers or cuts from sharp edges. I will come back probably when I weld my thing for holding my vent on here, tack that up, make sure this is big enough. That is just barely big enough for it, so when there's a little piece right there, so when I come over and run that over, I'm going to get all taken out and clear out easy on there. So it's just what's next. So the other thing that I'm going to be doing with this, get all that metal dust out of there, I'm going to be taking and flat disking these sides right here, because I'm going to be putting brackets that'll mount onto the sides here so that I can mount it to what will be my forging table. But now I need to go ahead and swap discs. Now a lot of people don't do it, but it's always safe practice if whenever you're changing out the disc, go ahead and unplug it. That way you don't accidentally start it up on yourself. Last thing you want to do is start it up on yourself, end up with some serious cuts, injuries, because, you know, as I always say, emergency room visit isn't on anybody's budget. So, getting this tightened back down, making sure that flat disc is centered on here. Now this is the point where it really comes important, wearing that dust mask, because this is going to be ripping off the paint. The reason for using flat disc instead of grinding wheel is I don't want to remove a whole bunch of material. I want to remove the sharp edges, and I want to remove the paint. I want to remove the paint because I'm going to be doing some welding. I don't want to be welding on dirty surfaces. I want to remove the paint also because I don't want to be done with the fumes from that when it gets hot. So I'm going to worry about getting all of it right now, simply because I don't have it mounted yet. Once I do, I probably will. So put it back in, we're going to put it on. Okay, now that I've got that all roughed out, I definitely need to get a face shield. I was going over, figure out what I can use for that based off of what I already have. Leave that right there. And there, right there, this one of course, go ahead and cut off the same length as this one, but find my paint marker. Just to give me a general feel for the area that I'm going to need to clean off, so I can make sure I've got good metal to go ahead and weld to when I change that out and put that on there. Alright, so right now I'm going to do some modifications of it. If you notice, these still are really curved on here. This is really curved on here. I actually want to get these flatter on this, so I want to kind of flatten out the curve. Now I'm doing all this before the insulation. That's going to be done using KO wool and castable cement. Whenever you're using KO wool, you want to put something between the KO wool, whatever you're using, because KO wool will take and get airborne. If you're cutting it, working with it, you want to wear a respirator. That's why when I finish getting this forge built, I'm going to line it with KO wool as a secondary insulator, and I'm going to use that same castable cement that I used to cast my ribbon burner to go ahead and then go in and cast inside of that. Other reason for being a beneficial of a smaller forge, I also don't happen to need a large forge, not planning on doing any really huge projects, but let's go ahead and take care of the leveling of this thing out. And I am going to do that using my anvil for the first time ever. I can remember where I set that down off camera here. Yes. Oh, here it is. Now, this anvil is not a very good anvil. I don't need a very good anvil. I'm not going to be doing a whole lot. I don't have it mounted yet. I will be. I started off using a piece of tool steel, just a flat 4x6 piece, and that works as a beginning anvil if you can get it mounted onto something securely on there. So, we'll go ahead and do this. Have my hammer, and we're just going to come across here, level this down, level that down just a little bit. Remember, with all these, I'm not wanting to do a whole heck of a lot. Now the other thing, remember, I'm doing these ends, I'm intentionally keeping the opposite end on the anvil, that way leveling out both sides at the same time. Now the reason I didn't come across and just do a cut here is I want that curved metal to help provide strength to the structure. This is not a very big container that I'm dealing with. The walls on it are not very thick. If you saw the sparks, you saw the explosions coming off of the sparks when I was cutting on it. That is indicative of it being a high strength steel. So I do have that going for me. Being mild, I was also pretty sure that that was going to be the case because this is a pressure vessel. Even though it's not as much of a pressure vessel, it wasn't a refillable tank like what happens with your propane tanks. So it's not as tough as that. But the thing is when you're using it, you don't need to. If you've got an old propane tank that you can find, use it. If you don't, you're going to have to go out and buy a tank. Hey, have a helium party. You know, go get some helium balloons for a party and stuff. Get a helium tank, do some balloons on that. These, especially right now, so I'm keeping it now. That's not to say that's always going to be the case. Helium prices has been known to fluctuate. So, you want to definitely check what the cost of it is to determine if it's worth it. And always check your area. There might be, check Craigslist, check your local want ads. Where I'm at, in the Mountain West, we have KSL Classifieds. It's where I actually got the scrap metal I was going to be using before I got this, with a 55-gallon drum. I was actually going to cut, bring into a circle, weld, and then make the doors, but when my wife needed helium balloons for an event, you know, that gave me an excuse here. And you can see I've got this, got the curve pretty much out of these on this. So what additionally I'm going to go ahead and do, now it's good practice, whenever you're done with your tools, always put them back, that way you can find them. Let me go ahead and check this here this way. Make sure that doing that I didn't. Okay. Now if you remember, I've got that hole, I've got a patch, I'll be doing that here in a bit. I need to take that inside and leave it to make sure it's room temperature, because where we're at right now is in my shop outside. The only reason it's not cold here right now is because I have a heater that I am using. So, one other thing I do want to do here is go ahead and where I'm going to be putting these on. I don't know if this is going to actually do anything. No, it's not. Not without me really wailing on that and really destroying the overall structural integrity of the piece. So, benefit of that not being mounted yet, I can move that easily. You know, some things I'm going to be doing with that. Now, yeah, see that piece I've cut off. Now, if you want to, one thing you can do with all of your steel cut-offs, go ahead and save them. You might have a use for them later. I'm going to go ahead and actually save these larger pieces, because they'll give me some metal I can practice forging on, practice bends and stuff like that. Now, one thing I want to do here, because I think the flat disc I have is one that I've been using for a while, so I'm going to check it, see what, yeah, this is my 40 grit wearing down. I'm going to try a new one on here and then take that to get the rest of it off. So whenever you're storing discs, I always recommend storing them with, let's see, outside of, that's important. And I know some people take the guards off. I'm not one of them. Reason I don't take the guards off, although, you know, having the guard on for spark protection is a very important thing on there. The reason I do not take it off is the simple fact that I want something that I can rest it on when I go to set it down. So by having the guard, there's something solid there that I can actually set the grinder down on that'll keep it from being in direct contact with the table when I'm done grinding, without me having to worry about it coming to a complete stop. It also provides something, you know, somewhat of a cushion in the event that something happens and it falls, you know, just to help to prevent it being broken. It's always good though to have it there, because there's always that other possibility, especially with a grinding or a cutting disc, it's more especially a cutting disc than anything else, of accidentally, because you'd never intentionally, shattering the disc. And if that disc goes flying, the last thing you want it to do is be flying and hitting you. That'll really make a bad day. And again, I always say, isn't a emergency room visit's not in anybody's budget. I hope that's not in yours. If you're budgeting for that, there's other things you should be worried about. Now, one thing I will admit here, I really should go ahead and get a full shield face mask that I can wear over my respirator. Simply, especially as I was doing this grinding, realizing that just these glasses that I wear is not enough protection. So I'm going to need to look into doing that. Alright, so we'll go over one thing here. Other reason why I wear a respirator. That's amount of dust that accumulated on my phone. and a bunch of these metals want to accumulate there with my fabric with my mic. So that's why I do that. Now go ahead and just check my time real quick. Okay, I got a little bit. What I'm going to do real quick, I'm going to go ahead and vacuum this all up. I don't know if you can see this right here, but that's just that dust. Just polished up. Some of it's the paint, it's the other stuff from there. So what I will be doing, I'm able to come back here, secure it this way here. I'm going to be coming back. You see this right here. That's the piece of angle iron for the bed frame that I put in earlier. These are ones at the end. The reason I'm using these is I've got all these holes right here. Let me hold this down. I've got all these holes right here. I can easily take and mount it and then just put a weld across here onto the frame. That way I can hold it, have it melted to my table, and not have to worry about it rolling away. But what I'm going to be doing right now, and I'm going to be stopping video because I do have to go take care of some other things. I'm going to go ahead and vacuum up this dust, because this is one of the other things you want to make sure you're doing. You're cleaning up as you go, because otherwise it can become a nightmare trying to get caught up on stuff. Alright, so got that started. You know, pretty much all of it gone. I didn't take this out on the weld because I don't want to remove that weld material and weaken it right there at that point, because that's where these two pieces have been pushed together and then welded together. Well, not sure if you can see my breath on camera, but it's a different day here. Got this piece cut off here. Now, I'm going to be taking, well, let's come over this way. So, I've got this piece right here. I'm going to be tapering, grinding it, because this is the piece that's going to be welded off. I'm not going to really worry about the rest of it. I was taking all the paint off there, so I didn't have to worry about that going in later. That's the part that's going to be getting hot, but I'm not going to be really worried too much about this. I'm going to put this in the vise so I can come on, do this, and same thing right here on this piece. Obviously, you know, these are two. This is one bed frame. This is from another completely different one. It's the two I found. Not sure what happened with the other one of this or this one, but that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm just going to be throwing this in the vise right here, like this, so that it can hold it. Now, one other thing, don't ever over tighten. All you're going to do is strip it. If you're putting a cheater on there to get it, trying to get it tighter, all you're doing, you're not moving these, you're stripping your threads out in here. That's a good way to ruin a vise. So don't do it. Now with this, because I want to angle it, I'm going to be using an actual grinding wheel here. Let me relocate the camera a bit and get a little bit better angle on it. There we go. You know what? I'm changing it out. The other thing, you want to make sure whenever you're plugging in, try to limit your cord reach. Try to put stuff back up so that you don't end up with a cluttered workspace. Makes life a lot nicer for me. Just as a general rule, I can always be thinking about. And then hang your tools back up. That way you don't end up going looking for them, not be able to find them. Okay, there we go. Now, let's go ahead and position this up. I'm going to be working right here. Just go ahead and put it's right there. I'm not putting that up because I'm not necessarily done with the grinder yet. Just gotta check time, yeah. Actually, I am going to be done with it. Some other stuff I've got to do this morning. So whenever you're done with the tools, you know, I always leave the one on there. That way, if I need, that's the one I happen to need next time I use it, I don't have to change it. I'm not putting that off. I'm not doing a whole bunch of work again and again. And if I need to change it, that's the first thing I'm doing the next time I use it. I don't. One thing that, if you've got the capability of doing it, if you're not on budget, remember time's budget too. And this is a time-saving one. You're going on, and it's not a bad thing, especially if you're doing this a lot, to have multiple grinders, have a cutoff grinder, have, you know, and whatnot. You can find some cheap ones out there, and for the time that it saves you, it might end up being worth your while. Now for the hot part. Now with these welds, I am not extremely worried about it. And the reason I say that is because actually, because of how they are, I'm going to go ahead and put the weld on this side, and that way I've got that raised pretty much right in the even center. Now the reason I say I'm not too worried about it is because the primary purpose of these welds is not to support the weight of the item, but just to keep it from rolling. That's the whole reason, that's the goal of these welds here. So I know for a fact I'm not a good welder. How much welding I did on that chamber for my thing, that should come as no surprise to anyone. Use a little wire feed. Now this is where if I had a real welding table it would be nice, because I could just take this and clamp it to that instead of having to come over here and clamp it to the item that I'm working on. However, this is a cheap little wire feed welder from Home Depot, or from Harbor Freight, and I've found it actually works out really well. It's been very forgiving of me, so you know, I'm afraid it doesn't always make the best tools. There's a lot of reviews out there on their stuff, but for what I'm doing, for what I need a welder to be able to do, works very well. Had to do it over again. You know, a lot of people say stick welding, and if you're going to be doing a lot, and I'd say yeah, but the benefit of this is I have one supply I have to go get, so it allows me when I'm operating on the budget to buy the roll that I need. Unlike with you know, stick welding, you might be able to do it with a bunch of different sticks, so it's not too bad. But you got to make sure you're saving them and keeping them in a sealed container. So that's the benefit I like of this one, is it just makes it easier, and as opposed to a true MIG design, because this is flux core wire, I don't have to have any kind of shielding gas, which is the drawback of that one. So I'm actually going to stop the video now because I don't want to accidentally damage the camera with the UV from the welding. Also, whenever you're welding, wear full length sleeves on there, cotton. You don't want any synthetic because it'll melt. But yeah, I'm going to weld these up here really quick and then probably be done for right now. Okay, so I thought I was recording, wasn't, but let me tip that so I can see what you're seeing. That was my first weld. Fairly decent, not very good welder, just still learning. That was my second weld. It was nasty. I put a hole in there and then just kept trying to fill that hole in, and yeah, it was all sorts of luck for me. But I'm going to go ahead, get the doors built using the fire brick. I'm going to be putting angle iron around here, be going over that. Once I get that in, because I'll be doing the welding, that's when I'm going to come back in, cut my cale wool, and then be putting the castable in there. So getting closer to being able to be ready to fire up. I already have the burner in there. So what I am going to do though is turn it on low, let it warm up, and then cut the propane off just so that I can slowly cure it. Make sure that's in there, because I don't want to just take it all of a sudden right up when I'm doing that castable in there, but I'll talk about that more later. Yeah, have a great day. Bye.